bit about the impact and some things you can do to mitigate that impact. And then we will chat over any questions y'all have towards the end. So let's dive right in. Debbie, do you want to go ahead and give yourself an intro?
Well, my name is Debbie Boone. I am a CVPM and I managed hospitals for 23 years. Recently, I've written a book called Hospitality and Healthcare that talks a lot about using technology to serve people well. And I have been talking about client service, communication for at least 20 years in VetMed as a speaker, a writer, and a trainer.
So definitely an expert on the subject.
I know a few things.
Hey everybody, my name is Michael Shirley. My wife and I own Family Pet Health, which is a small animal and exotic practice in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, about 30 miles south of Nashville. My wife is a veterinarian. I am a school teacher by training, but I manage our hospital. We're a 5-doctor practice. We've been using PetDesk and Vetstoria, some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. We've been using it in our practice since we started in 2018, and I'm looking forward to helping you all with some things that have worked for us to cut down on our no-shows.
Awesome. And if you've joined a PetDesk webinar before, you probably have seen my face at least once. My name is Mary Schwartz. I'm a CVT. I have 13 years in clinical practice in veterinary medicine, working my way up from technician all the way to practice manager of general practice. So came over to PetDesk close to 4 years ago now and have been working with tons of practices since then to implement these kinds of tools to help them be more profitable and to prevent no-shows. So as we start to talk about no-shows, we want to point to a pretty surprising statistic, which is 11% of appointments will result in a no-show. That's really, really, really high to me. And this is a part of why practices are now seeing the importance of technology and using it to reduce the number of no-shows. You can improve financial issues by just getting more appointments through your door, right? Having less empty space on your schedule. And you can improve the flow of the appointment being completed and booked into your practice with technology as well. No one wants to deal with constantly kicking appointments down the road, rebooking, gaps on your schedule, folks in your practice who have nothing to do suddenly out of nowhere. And with staff being overworked, if we can do anything to even out their day and not make it full of highs and lows, but just make it steady, it can go a long way to kind of help them. And, it takes more time for them to get back on track after dealing with a no-show than it does just to kind of keep up a consistent level of work throughout the day. And we talked about this a little bit before we started the webinar. Nobody wants to be sweeping floors all day, every day. Nobody wants to find, the 700th thing in the hospital to clean in order to fill that time when no-shows hit. So the goal of this is to let you guys walk away with some really strong ideas and tools by which you can help reduce and prevent no-shows. I'll kick it over to Debbie to get us started.
So I guess the question starts as, why do people not show up? And I think we found this more so after the pandemic hit and we really struggled to get people in. I looked at some old statistics, and actually like 2017, 2018, our no-show percent was only 9%. So we've actually gotten worse post-pandemic. Now, have they just, gotten into some bad habits? I think so. I feel like a lot of things that were pandemic forced had to do with our inability to get people in. So they were calling around a bunch of different practices. They found the one that could get them in the fastest. They completely ignored the 5 other appointments that they had made with other hospitals and just went to the one who got them in. But we've kind of settled down from that now. So I feel like we have to understand the first thing people just forget. I mean, I personally have forgotten appointments. I feel bad about it. I usually call up and beg forgiveness and try to, make up for that. But life is busy. People are running mad races. Things happen and we just forget. The other thing is, maybe in the scheduling process wasn't exactly what we needed to work with our schedule as a customer, and it was inconvenient for us. So how did we maybe found something that was a little more convenient somewhere else and we didn't bother to call? The other thing is not really understanding the rules. And this is something that we certainly could address in our messaging to our clients, from the very time we're making the phone call or whether they're using an online booking appointment. Let's message it appropriately so that people understand that when they don't cancel an appointment, there's an animal that needs us that we can't help. And when you put it into that perspective for people, I feel like they're much more likely to take some ownership and cancel because they don't want animals to suffer either. And if they're not going to use that important space that you need to care for a pet who you couldn't get in, then maybe they're a little more likely to call up. Maybe their pet's behaving badly. This is the other thing. Or I don't know. Over the years, I answered the phone for many, many years in my hospital. And I'd have clients call up and go, "Oh my gosh, Debbie, I have chased this cat around the house for the last hour and a half. I can't get it in the carrier. And I know my appointment is, here on time. I mean, and I'm running late for the appointment and I can't catch the cat." That kind of stuff happens. Other things happen in their lives last minute. I was just telling you guys, I just got a phone call from my niece and my mother fell and she's okay, but she's 91 tomorrow. And so that's an unexpected life event that sometimes can just throw a monkey wrench in all the plans that you have out there. But that being said, there's tools that we can put into place that will help overcome that. And I know that, Michael has some great examples in his practice of how using technology to remind people. I know my dentist, I feel like my dentist kind of worries me to death, sending so many reminders out like, "Oh, it's the dentist again." But you know what? I go to my dentist appointment and I do not fail to cancel them unless something dire has happened. So I feel like using technology to make sure that we are helping people as best we can keep on track with scheduling and understand the importance of what happens if they don't cancel for other animals out there in the world is a good idea. And texting is certainly a tool that we absolutely should use. There's 99% open rate for text messages. And I always open all my texts. Emails, sometimes I get lost in the shuffle. But having a system in place that immediately confirms people's appointment when they make it at the moment, a couple of weeks ahead of time, if they've made it that far in advance, make sure that we remind them 4 days before and 2 days before. And back in the day, we used to call them like the day before. But that doesn't give us the opportunity to fill the schedule slot. So if we know 2 days ahead of time, we have people on a waiting list or people that we could call to get that appointment slot filled, or people who are calling day of that we could fill that appointment slot with.
When we first set out to cut down on our no-shows at Family Pet Health, the first place we had to start with was a little research, right? So we looked at our internal numbers. First, you have to be tracking them. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage you to set up a way that you track no-shows in your practice management software. So that was our first step. Then we started looking at were there any patterns in who was no call, no showing? What we found when we first set out to tackle this was in 2020. And we saw that the majority of the people that were no call, no showing for our office were new clients. So we're like, okay, so that's interesting. And then that was like 80% were new clients that we had no relationship with, and 20% were our established clients. So we said, okay, these are definitely two separate segments. So let's look at our existing clients. So what we started doing was we called them and we said, "Hey, it's Michael Shirley from Family Pet Health. We know you missed your appointment. Can you just help us understand why?" And I posted a question in the chat, like, what are some reasons that you personally have forgotten? Somebody said car problems, or you just forgot, or you forgot to put it in your phone calendar. We used to, when we first bought our practice, they sent out postcards, but people weren't putting that postcard reminder into their calendar. So we said, okay, we have to come up with a way to make sure that people have it in their phone or in their digital calendar or whatever they're using. So we started looking at solutions for that. The second thing that we looked at was these new clients. And what we found were the reasons that they were no call, no showing, was that honestly, they were going around, like Debbie said, and just booking appointments at several different hospitals. And then they went to the one that could get them in first. And they didn't call the rest of us that they had also booked with.
Mm.
And so that was a real problem. They didn't have a relationship with us. They didn't care if it disrupted our day. They didn't know us. They didn't even probably know that it disrupted our day. It's not even in their thought process. They just wanted to get their pets seen. So that was one problem. There was no relationship. The second thing was that there was no financial reason for them to care whether they no called or no showed at all. So we felt that we should ask for a booking fee when a new person booked with our appointment, booked an appointment with our office. And we would tell them that we're going to send you, we're going to take a deposit. We used to have to do that on the phone. Now we use PetDesk Pay. We just send them we use PetDesk and PetDesk Pay, and we send them a booking fee link that they pay $50. If they don't show up, they don't get it back. If they do show up, we apply it to their appointment. So we put some incentive there with them, and we tell them, hey, we don't know you. You don't know us. This just shows us both that we're serious. We're not going to double book an appointment because we're afraid that you might not show up. That way, when we commit to having an appointment time for you, we need you to commit to actually showing up, and then we'll be able to give you our great customer service that we do. And so that's what we did. The other thing is just to understand that our clients do have busy lives and kids and schedules and spouses. And so just being understanding of our existing clients, we give them one free pass. And then after that, we tell them, hey, you've no called, no showed, and that really disrupts our day, as you can imagine. And so now you have to pay a booking fee, and they usually understand that. So I'm proud to say our no call rate right now is just barely over 3%. And for new clients that pay a booking fee, we've had 2 clients in 3 years that have not showed up for their appointment.
Sounds like it's working, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about how those no-shows really impact our business. Debbie, I'd like to turn it over to you to talk about the financial impact particularly.
Well, I mean, any gap in our schedule is a gap in productivity, and our doctors are sitting there with nobody to see. And so when you look at the statistics of this, think about if your case average is, $200, and you have 2 of these in a day, well, that's a $400 hit on your day's production. And then maybe you have 3 doctors. Well, now that's times 3. And then you start to look at this over years, and it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars of financial impact on the practice. I think it's really interesting to looking at the chat. What some of folks have said is like the spouses don't talk to each other. I've been doing this 40 years. That has not changed. And it's like they don't know. So I feel like if we are, what Michael is talking about is there's accountability here. There is skin in the game. And one of the other things is setting expectations for what we expect from clients. We don't have a tendency to talk about that a lot on these quick phone calls. Well, yeah, we got you booked and here's what we expect, because we're assuming that you're just going to show up. I do feel like the point that he made about people don't know you, there's no relationship there. And that's why having that booking fee really makes a difference. And at a $50 range, that's a good pain point. I feel like it's not so much that they think, oh, well, my visit is going to be, not much more than that. Why should I have to pay for the whole visit? But it's enough to say I don't want to lose it if I don't book, and people understand that. And sending a link out through a text message to go ahead and get paid is a great boon to that, because otherwise you're, old school punching in numbers off of the telephone and taking people's credit card over the phone is kind of a unsafe and unsecure way to be doing that. Not to mention the fact it actually costs you more to take a call, to take a payment that way with your credit card provider. And I think the other part of this is let's financially prepare people for what they're expected to pay. Over the years, I've trained a lot of CSRs, And we get those phone calls about how much is it going to be. And we automatically kind of go into assumption that people are just cheap and that they don't want to pay. That's not really true. What people are trying to do is be prepared and have a plan. And we need to make sure that we are preparing them appropriately for what to anticipate when the pet is ill. And that's not to say that our CSRs are trying to prescribe and diagnose over the telephone, but you could give people ballparks because you've seen enough of this going out. You know, if there's a limping dog, he's probably going to need an x-ray. They're going to have to do an exam. There may be medications to go home. So anticipate bringing, maybe $500 or $600 to the practice. And we can do that over the telephone. The other thing I like for my CSRs to do is to make a connection. As you know, what Michael was talking about, having a relationship, you can make a relationship with somebody you don't know by making a connection and listening intently to them over the telephone, introducing yourself at the beginning of the call, but also reintroducing yourself at the end of the call and say, I'm looking forward to seeing you in spot, Mrs. Jones. Remember, my name is Deb. Ask for me when you come in. I'm your person. I gotcha. And people feel much more relaxed about coming into a place of business where they have a person they know and you are their person. So that's one way we can make a relationship quickly with somebody new, and of course also get them to pay a deposit to get in there. I will say that talking about delaying appointments in times of a financial economic challenge, and I've been through 4 of these now in my career, people will delay getting the care for their pet. And what we saw, particularly in 2008, when the economy was so tough, is we were seeing animals on average 3 days sicker than we had prior to 2007. So I see anytime there's a challenging economic time and times of inflation and times when people feel stressed financially, there is a delay in getting people in. And so it's our job to kind of make sure we're getting people in when they're calling so that that pet is getting care and it's going to cost the clients less. And we need to encourage that. Over the years, I laugh because I feel like, and any CSRs can confirm this, do you feel like people are calling so you will talk them out of coming? They're like, are you sure I really need to come? And yeah. So my patent line for that was always, if you're concerned enough to call, you know your pet better than anybody else, it's important to come. And if there's nothing, that's great. We sell peace of mind in our hospitals too.
Absolutely. And I want to go back just a minute to something Debbie said about basically reinforcing at the end of the call how excited you are to see them. Michael, can you share some ideas for helping your CSRs get in the habit of doing that, along with, chatting through the impacts on family pet health and staff workload?
Yes. So there's Megan in the chat is talking about pushback from maybe the powers that be about doing a booking fee. So let me talk to you about this, because this is how you get buy-in from all levels of your hospital. As a manager, which I think, or an opinion leader within your hospital, which I would assume the people that are on here are, or they wouldn't be listening to this webinar. Here's what you have to decide. What are the driving forces for the different people you're talking to? So if you have to talk to an owner like me who is consumed by the numbers, then you want to look at, if we can reduce our no call, no shows, it's going to help the bottom line. If you're looking at it with the CSRs, who are the ones that are dealing with the phone calls, what we want to do is talk about patient care. Same thing with our medical team, right? Their main driving force is patient care. So you want to frame all of the reminders that we're going to be talking about, that whether it's a booking fee or automated reminders and booking, online booking and stuff. When you're trying to roll this out in your hospital, you have to figure out what motivates the different people you're talking to. So at Family Pet Health, the effect of a no-show on staff workload is that we want to keep the day running smoothly. Debbie already alluded to it a little bit, that it's harder to recover from sitting there with waiting for someone to show up, it's harder to get started. Like the flow just doesn't, you
Mhm.
got highs and lows versus just maintaining a constant level of attention throughout the day. It's harder to recover. So we want to keep the day managed so we don't have peaks and valleys, but it's more of a flat line at a high level, I would say. The other thing is that patients, so no shows cause patients to wait. Whether it was the original one that booked, that person didn't show up, that patient had to wait to be seen by a vet, which means that their condition worse, which also means a higher bill at the end of the day, which is what the people were afraid about coming in to begin with.
Mhm.
It also, there's an opportunity cost. If you've booked and set aside appointment time, you're not able to see someone else. So we want to make sure that, well, by golly, if somebody's going to no show, I want to fill it with one of our clients. So we want to make sure that not only is that original patient being seen, but so are the other patients in our hospital. So we want to cut that down. And then we want staff, when they're busy, they have a higher job satisfaction because they feel like their work is making a difference. And that's what people want. They want to feel a part of a team, and they want to know that their work matters. And so we want to make sure that the schedule is full with the appropriate appointments so that our team has that job satisfaction. I think that's what you were asking me, Mary. So did I do that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. I think
Okay.
job satisfaction is such a huge part of it. Nobody, like I mentioned earlier, nobody gets into working on the medical staff at a
Yeah.
hospital so they can dust something, you know?
Yeah. So if Megan is, if she knows, and there may be other people on the webinar that like, hey, my boss is not going to let me do a booking fee. Don't worry about the booking fee. Let's talk about patient care. Let's talk about the bottom line for the practice. Figure out what motivates that particular person who's giving you pushback and target your approach to what their driving force is. Hey, if we can ensure that people show up, we're going to be able to take better care of their pets. How can we motivate them to show up? Maybe it's financially, maybe it's through reminders, which I think is what we're going to be talking about next.
Yes, you got it. So first we want to chat over if you do want to institute booking fees in your hospital, what does that look like? How do you get into it? And this was a little bit of what I was driving at, Michael, was helping your
Gotcha.
team script it so that way there's the same messaging every single time.
Yep.
And to Debbie's point, then they can also be using very client-friendly, excited to see you kind of language, which helps drive that visit as well. So how did you guys do that at Family Pet?
Well, the first thing we do is we don't call them deposits. We call them booking fees. So now you may hear me go back and forth because I'm still learning that reset myself because it seems like a deposit, right? But it's a booking fee because a deposit infers that you're going to get it back. A booking fee, there's no expectation. If you book, you have to pay a fee. This is for a new client, right? And we just script it. Hey, again, it's a conversation between two people. We found that $50 is what works for us. You may need to change that dependent upon your situation and your area. But we found $50 it wasn't our full exam fee, but we felt that we saw $50 made sure that people showed up. It lowered our rates down to just over 3%. We're satisfied with that. And so we call it a booking fee, but we will apply that. If you show up, we will apply that to you, to your appointment fee. But if you don't show up, you lose it. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. We tell them, right, that we used to just use PetDesk text to pay. So we use PetDesk Pay. So as soon as we put them on the schedule, we would say, we're going to send you a link to pay your booking fee right now. You have 24 hours to pay it. And if you don't pay it in the next 24 hours, we are going to assume that you've changed your mind about coming to Family Pet Health, and you will no longer have that appointment slot. We're going to give it to somebody else. So it's really important that you pay it as soon as we send it to you. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. That's how we've done it. We also started to do this with our surgeries. So we have I think it's $250 to book your surgery. We do call that a deposit. We say it's a surgery deposit, and they get that back and applied to their surgery as long as if they make any changes, they have to do that within 72 business hours of their surgery date. Because we found that that's what works for us. We can fill a surgery within that time frame. So again, like Debbie already shared, you just need to be clear when you're talking to your clients so that they know what to expect with they know what to expect as far as what they're going to be charged and how it applies to their bottom line.
One other
Before-
point that I will make, because I see that in the chat, I can see that some people are saying, I can't get my boss to follow through with this. But if you could get some activity on the client's part, so if they, won't allow you to do the booking fee, as Michael was talking about, you can send out a history form, and that they have to fill out the history form within X amount of hours, because nobody's going to sit down and fill out usually a patient history form on a visit they don't plan to come to. And the other thing I've found too is in having them fill out the history form at home, you're probably having the main caregiver do the history form rather than the kid they sent to drop the animal off or bring him in because they were at work. So you're going to get better history, but there are practices that are using the history form to work with the no-show challenge that's being beneficial to them too. I don't think it's as beneficial as money, but time is money, to people. And so if they're investing some time in going ahead and filling out their patient's history, and it's a fairly thorough history too. It's not just, your dog is doing A or B or C. You want a fairly thorough history, then they've got some skin in the game there too. So it's another alternative. Yeah.
There's a question in the chat about data and opportunity costs. Like, do we actually lose people because we asked for them to pay a booking fee? And this might be Maria's boss's pushback too. Stephen, I know Stephen's watching, or at least he's been chatting in here, and he may be able to share. We don't think that what we gained by decreasing our no-show rate more than compensated for anybody that's like, I'm not paying that. I can only think of 2 people that really gave us pushback about, I'm not doing that. We're like, okay, we understand. Hey, good luck. There's 36 other vet hospitals in the county from which you can choose. So you'll probably be very happy there. And we just eliminated that from our conversation.
There's one more question that I want to kind of dip into before we move on, which is, how do you handle same day new client appointments then? Are you still charging the booking fee to book those, or how are you handling that right now?
I'm sorry, I was reading. What was your question again? Sorry.
The question was, how do you handle same day new client appointments?
That is a great question. Usually, if it's a same day thing, we'll still send them that link because we are holding a spot for them. If we don't know them, we use that same script. We don't know you, you don't know us. This just shows we have one spot today. So this shows a commitment from you to us that you're coming, because I'm going to be turning away. I guarantee I'm going to be turning away one of my clients later when we hang up the phone. And so it's just a clear expectation. It's part of what we do. It's one of our core values, trust. And, I trust if you pay me $50, you're going to come. So
you're going to show up. Yes.
Yeah, you're going to show up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I've seen some practices, Mary, that, on that same day, it's the entire exam fee. So rather than, like Michael was talking about, the booking fee, you say, well, in order to book you on the same day, we will ask you to pay the exam fee up front. And of course, that's credited, when you come in. So it's a little more money, but it's a little less opportunity that you have to book an appointment if they don't show up in that slot.
Absolutely. And I also find, from just a staff training and compliance with procedure perspective, the simpler you can make it with the fewer exceptions, the better. It's better for clients, because then nobody's talking to each other and finding out that they got an exception and somebody else didn't. But it's also better for your front desk staff, who doesn't have to go through a flow chart of what exceptions can I make for this person. It just either is or isn't.
That's exactly, you're exactly spot on.
Yes.
Yep. Keep it simple and fair and equitable across the board. Yep.
And we've talked a lot about how much to charge for a deposit, but I think Debbie's got some good recommendations for us here too.
Yeah. So depending on what they're coming in there for, if it's routine wellness stuff, I think it's, as Michael was saying, that $50 deposit is a reasonable thing. If it's urgent care, and of course, this depends on what kind of practice you're doing too. If it's a more urgent case and you have saved your slots for urgent care, you might want to put a higher deposit on that, because having all hands on deck waiting for something urgent to come in, it has taken a lot more financial skin in the game for the practice than for that. The other thing is look at where you are. Now, I will tell you, in my hospital, the one I managed for 19 years, I probably would never have put in a booking fee. Why? Because all my clients were coming from referrals from my country club. We've got tons of money clients. And if they didn't show up, they usually sent somebody, like a staff member or somebody. Said we really have a big problem with it. And the other thing is they knew us all very well. And it's like Michael said, we were an old and established practice. We had a lot of people who knew us well, and plenty of opportunity. The other thing we kept was a wait list. And so if people, we didn't have anything that day, we had people that we could call and say, hey, we had a cancellation. Do you want to pop in? My dentist does this, and I see no reason why we can't do it too. Practice size. The other thing is, are there other things that you could be doing because you have a multitude of doctors there, or is it a one doctor practice? For a one doctor practice, you really don't have the opportunity to afford people to no show on you, because you are the only income source of that practice. And so that makes a difference. And then I love the practice reputation one, because are you the practice of choice in your community? And I expect that Family Pet probably is, but we had become the practice that everyone wanted to go into, sort of like the Michelin 5-star restaurant that you wait 6 months to get a reservation. So what is your practice reputation? And do people really want to come to you because you are the place? Or are you, just a more, I call them kind of stick them and go. Every practice has its place, but you have to know what your brand is. So what is your brand? And that makes a difference when you're deciding these charges.
100%. Yes, it should all be a part of your messaging to your customers, your brand image, your values, etc. Like Michael said, trust is one of their values, and that carries over to their deposit charges. So a big part of reducing no-shows that isn't deposit related is setting expectations for pet parents across all your methods of communication. So making sure they know when their appointment is upcoming, texting them, emailing, using your website to talk about cancellation policies, using social media, things like that. And another big piece is knowing your audience, right? We want to meet our clients where they are. And we had a really good discussion about this a couple days ago, but understanding that not every client is going to want to text, and not every client's going to want a postcard. So it's important to have those methods sent to the appropriate people and not just send everybody everything, because the more you communicate, the more likely they are to ignore your communications. So make sure your appointment reminders are set up. Make sure there's specific expectations for the appointment. To Debbie's point earlier, you can have that new client form or that medical history form in that reminder, so they're ready to get it filled out, and you can get a little bit of that buy-in from the pet parent that they're coming in, they're excited about the appointment, and you can streamline your histories and make them more accurate. Debbie, what kind of impacts have you seen from these methods of communication?
Well, we were talking about this the other day, and I laughed because I have PetDesk. The practice that I take Tucker to goes to PetDesk. And so I do get email reminders and I get text message reminders, but I run around like a chicken with my head cut off. And so when the postcard comes in, I go, uh-oh, I really need to do something about this. So the postcard for me is like a Post-it note that I stick on my bulletin board, and it keeps me reminded. For other people, they probably don't get 500 emails a day like I do, and email is a valid way for them to respond back. But I feel like text messaging is probably the most effective for the majority of people who are walking around with a cell phone. And Michael and I were talking about our parents, because his dad is in his 90s. My mother turns 91, and my mom is like no tech. I mean, she is a great pet owner, and the minute her postcard comes, man, she is there and on the phone call making her appointment. But other people are much more tech savvy, and that's how they want to be reminded. I feel like a lot of times in our communication with clients, the question we forget to ask is, how do you want to receive this stuff? What do you
Mhm.
want? I'm working with a client a couple of days ago, and they have people opting out of things, and then they're missing their reminders because they opted out to not get that kind of stuff. And I think, again, setting expectations in our clients and saying, this is how we will communicate with you. So don't opt out of things or opt out of like newsletters if you want to do that, but don't opt out of everything because this is how we communicate with you. And you've got to tell people that ahead of time, not look up and all of a sudden you've got a 50% compliance rate on your reminders because you didn't really let people know that that's how they were going to be reminded for things.
Mhm.
But automation, having a long perspective in vet med, and I really hate to tell you guys this because it is so old school. But when I first started in practice, we would run postcards through the postage meter, and our job was we bundled them up after the people left. We would write the postcards out, then put them in little bundles, and then we would pull everything that was due for July and run them through a postage meter. It took hours and hours of time, not to mention the fact they all went out at the same time. Everybody called, they all kind of rushed in at the same time. So when we're automating things, our staff now has freedom of time to spend time making connections and relationships with our clients that are in the building, that doing appropriate tasks that help grow our business rather than doing what I call monkey work, which means I'm just rubber stamping blindly a bunch of postcards to send out, or sending a whole, printing out a bunch of emails and having to send those out. So the automation saves us. The other thing is, we are shorthanded in most practices that I go to. I feel like it's getting better, and Michael can confirm this, but I feel like the staffing is getting a little better. There's an easement on people coming into practice now. But when you don't have enough humans to do this kind of work, technology will save you. So use technology to save manpower and put the manpower where only humans can do the work.
I think one thing that we've enjoyed about having PetDesk is that this is what they do. So, they were really great in helping us set up what they thought. Hey, let's start with this. We're going to send them reminders. Their first one's a week ahead. Then and then 3 days ahead. Then for us, when it gets to 2 days ahead and 24 hours ahead, then it sends us alerts that we need to call that person. And so what we try to do is know whether or not they're coming 2 days before their appointment. Either the client has confirmed on their own, or we have finally been able to make contact with them via a phone call so that we know they're coming. And if they're not, then we also communicate, we have been unable to reach you. You have not confirmed. We are releasing your appointment because we have other people that need it. Please contact us. And then I think we're going to talk about this maybe in just a minute about what you do afterwards. But we found the more you can communicate and have a structure and have it automated, it requires us to pick up the phone a whole lot less than it did before we were using that option.
Yeah. I think the language is very important, and Michael said it. We're releasing your appointment, but release it so we can serve another pet. And the language there matters, and people go, oh, that makes sense to me, rather than, oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing out on, $200 and just because you're showing up. We are still a very trusted profession, no matter what the, New York Times is saying. So we want to make sure that we keep always in the forefront of the language that we use, that we are here for animals, for their people, and it's all about providing care. And every opportunity that we can. And so we don't want to limit opportunity to care for animals.
Your words matter. The words that you choose matter. And they also will cut back on pushback. So it matters.
Yes, 100%. And so to that point, I would absolutely say scripting is really, really important early in the process for any change like this, because a little turn of phrase can go from someone understanding and being okay with something to someone being upset about something. So when you're working through a transition like this with your team, script everything out, have them practice it, have them say it over and over until it's just rote memory.
100%, 100%. Yeah, and we just got Sammy has an appointment with such and such. We're excited to see you. We're looking forward to see you. Our doctor is looking forward to seeing Sammy. That's a completely different story than, Sammy has an appointment, because it's personalizing it. It means my doctor is watching and my doctor cares. I think the same thing happens in our reminders. What are we saying in the text messages and in the reminders? Look at the language. I can remember sending out postcards or seeing postcards being sent out. Your pet is overdue. What you've basically said to that pet owner is, you suck. You're a bad pet owner. And people feel guilty. And then they are much less likely to come in because you've made them feel like they're not good at being a pet owner. Instead, the language could be, hey, Dr. Shirley is looking forward to seeing Sam, or Dr. Shirley's concerned that Sam is not up to date on his vaccines. How can we help you solve that problem? So it's a completely different story, and you got to pay attention to the language.
Absolutely. So let's chat about how to deal with repeat offenders, folks that, consistently no-show or just forgetful, like we mentioned earlier. Sometimes they just have a hard time remembering. And what policies you guys have implemented for chronic repeat offenders?
Well, I don't think you have repeat offenders because you stop that, if you, and that's, this is I think I see a lot with practice owners, is they need a reality check, because as Michael said, you got to be able to track this in your PIMS. And so having your CSRs document that people were no-shows or no-show, no-call in the appointment scheduler allows you to go and see who is doing this repeated. But one of my clinics used to send a bad behavior letter. So they would, as Michael said, we give them grace on the first one because stuff happens. But the second time they do it, we write a letter that says, we really want to continue to be your pet's veterinarian, but you've now missed 2 appointments. And so because of that, either you will have to pay a booking fee for every future appointment, or you're only a walk-in from now on. We won't book any appointments for you. And if they do it a third time, then you say, I'm sorry, you'll have to find a provider that meets your needs better. And you've got to be willing to let go of clients who are costing you money, because these clients truly put you in the hole, and they are not good clients. Yeah. And it's sort of like the same people who complain all the time. The doctor goes, oh, she's a really good client. No, she's really not. You just remember her because she complains all the time. But let's look at the dollars that she spends in your practice and see if she really is worth saving or not. Then that's the reality check. So I think those identifying patterns and having policies and having very specific language for what about the repeat offenders that we're going to use. And it doesn't have to be mean. You're not like, you suck and we're firing you. No, you don't have to be mean about it. You just gracefully say, we're not a fit for each other.
Yeah. And for a clinic like Megan's, where deposits just aren't an option, Debbie, what you mentioned, just make it be a walk-in. That's what my clinic did for years before we implemented deposits. Was you got two strikes, and then we would only book you as a walk-in, and be very clear that the expectation was you could wait an hour or more to see a doctor, because we would be working you in based on when you showed up. So that is one way that you can kind of enforce that. What about you, Michael? What have you guys been doing to help prevent this besides the deposits and stuff?
We don't have the issue, so I don't really have much more to offer than what's already been offered.
You fixed it.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I just typed into Megan. The only other option I have, if you're not able to charge them ahead of time, is to just double book their appointment, and if they actually show up, make them wait with clarification. Like, be specific with them. Hey, we have the receipts, because she said that I have the receipts where we've reached out to you 17 times, and we went ahead and booked this spot, and you're going to have to wait, or we're happy to reschedule you today. for another time with a deposit or not, I guess, as the case may be, as the case may be for that. And that maybe that's when you have that conversation face to face is we will be happy to reschedule if you would like. But this is it. Like if you don't show up for that one, then we're going to have to, because we are here to take care of pets. We have to take care of pets, whether it's your pet or someone else's pet. So that's all I have to add for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can certainly use communication tools like mass messaging to level set with your clients and say, hey, this is our new policy going forward. That way nobody's surprised. Our new policy is if you no show for 2 appointments in a row, will be a walk-in or you'll be double booked or whatever it may be. That policy could also be if you don't respond to reminder texts or you don't respond to reminder calls, we will have to release your appointment. And to Debbie's point, you can go through a phase. It doesn't have to be right away where you're interviewing each client that comes in and say, hey, this is our new policy. How would you like to be reached? So we make sure that we can get that appointment confirmed for you. And how can we make sure you communicate? Document
that you had that conversation with that client. If people no show for us, we do follow up with them afterwards with a text. It's automated. That's like, oh, we missed you. We're sorry. We know things happen and things forget. Here's a link. We include the link to reschedule with them. And then we follow up with some people directly because it is about compliance. We want people to get their pets in, get them taken care of. So we do utilize the automated in PetDesk for those that maybe don't use it. There's templates. So you don't have to type it out every single time. You write it once, save it, and then we label it as missed appointment. And then we text it to them.
For a missed appointment for a regular client, one of the first things I would say is, are you okay?
Correct.
Yeah. Yep. Are you okay? Because it's concern for something horrible might have happened to them family. Absolutely. You want to make sure, are you okay?
Absolutely. Good point.
Always believe the best in people, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Assume positive, assume positive intent. Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely. All right. Well, I want to turn it over to our participants here and find out if we've got any questions from our attendees or anything they would like Michael and Debbie to answer before we conclude for the day. Feel free to drop it in the chat or you can put it in the Q&A and we'll make sure that we go over it. I know we've answered a lot of questions as we've gone, so.
Yeah, it's been fun watching the chat. People have had really good comments and yeah, it made me grin when they talked about the spouses because, oh my gosh, that is just the bane of our existence at the front desk.
Oh man, that's bad client behavior right there. Sending your spouse with the pet,
don't send your spouse knowledge. Who knows nothing about your pet.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It was like they come in and they're like, we didn't know we were going to have a test. I don't know what's wrong with the animal. Yes,
I'm just always I'm always amazed by the folks who somehow don't know anything at all about the animals they live with.
It's true.
All right, I knew it was gonna happen. Christina's blaming the husbands, and I was so proud of y'all. I was so proud of y'all for saying spouses, and now Christina had to ruin my good.
But we really knew who it was.
Sometimes you don't have to say the quiet part out loud.
So yeah, right. Tiffany asked if a client shows up on the wrong date a couple of times, would you still charge a deposit? So if it's a couple of times, there's a problem there. So I would try to dig into that a little bit more. Yeah. As we have said several times, show grace. That's our default, is to show grace. It's kind of trust but verify. So I would just try to figure out what is it that they're having trouble with. See if you can identify a pattern. If there isn't a pattern to be discovered, then I think you have to take those on a case-by-case basis with an established client. Yeah. If it was a new client, man, no, you're not going to burn me. We aren't going to move forward without that booking fee.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think to Tiffany's point here, she said, especially if they're elderly people, sometimes we can be the first red flag for someone who is developing some dementia or Alzheimer's or things like that. And if another family member, say, hey, you might want to be in touch with that person. So we're a little concerned. Mrs. Jones has come in on the wrong date. And this is like the second or third time it's happened. We just want to make sure you're aware of that, and I agree with the elderly. The day before, call them that morning, we're looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, you could call me the day before. That would help me out too.
Yeah, me and you both, truthfully, yes.
If people, and this is why it goes back to finding out specific to your clients, find out what works for them,
Mhm.
and then finding what solutions you have that meet their
Mhm.
needs. And you can't do for one what you wish you could do for everybody.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But what we've done at Family Pet Health is base things on the big picture, and then we can refine things specifically for people if we need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
This one says,
to
this is a good question. How do you keep track of a deposit was made or not to hold an appointment? And if we start to use the online payment option, we flag it on our practice management system. We say that like we have shorthand. And I think Mary will be sending out our contact information. I'm happy to send that and share that with anybody, or Stephen can type it in like a copy paste one. It just says paid on there, paid deposit. For a new client, it'll say paid or not paid in the appointment description, and then we know whether or not they've done that. In the practice management system, we take it and we do credit it to their account as a booking fee, but it shows up as a an account balance. But we'll go in and zero those out later if they didn't show up.